The origins of stop-motion animation can be traced back to the late 19th century, a period marked by significant technological advancements and artistic experimentation. One of the earliest examples of this technique can be found in the work of Georges Méliès, a French filmmaker who, in the 1890s, began to explore the possibilities of manipulating inanimate objects to create the illusion of movement. These early experiments were crucial in demonstrating the potential of stop motion as a storytelling medium, paving the way for the development of more sophisticated animation techniques in the 20th century. This evolution of the medium not only enriched the cinematic landscape, but also established a foundation for future generations of animators to explore and innovate within this unique art form. But if one were to narrow down the time frame to before 1960, two names come to mind when it comes to stop-motion animation. Both these individuals not only pioneered the art of stop motion, but also inspired future generations of young men to go into the film industry with their spectacular animation styles. Our story begins with this man, Willis O'Brien, or Obie for short. He was an innovative stop-motion animator from the early 20th century. Even before he became an animator, he took up several jobs from a young age, ranging from cattle ranching to bartending. He officially began his career in stop-motion animation by creating 90 seconds of test footage depicting dinosaurs and cavemen. This footage would be picked up by the San Francisco exhibitor Herman Waber, who would commission Obie to create an animated film using the technique employed in his experimental shorts. Thus, Obie created the short film The Dinosaur and the Missing Link, a prehistoric tragedy, released in 1915. This was the first official film Willis O'Brien ever worked on, and throughout the rest of the 1910s, he would animate for several other films under Conquest Pictures, a film studio run by Thomas Edison. After completing the animation work for the film The Ghost of Slumber Mountain, Obie would be hired onto the effects team for the 1925 film The Lost World, a film adaptation of Arthur Conan Doyle's 1912 novel of the same name. This was the first full-length film to feature stop-motion animation in conjunction with live actors. Several years later, in the early 30s, Willis O'Brien would participate in the production of a project called Creation. Though this project would ultimately be scrapped by RKO Pictures, the puppets Obie created for the project would not go unused, as he would be hired by Marion C. Cooper and Ernest B. Schoedsack to animate for the project that is considered the greatest film he ever worked on. The film was a massive hit, as it would rake in $90,000 on its opening weekend, which would grow into $5 million worldwide. For the Oscars, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences proposed giving a special Oscar to Willis O'Brien for the film's effects. Obie declined the offer, as he would have rather seen everyone in his effects team be awarded their own Oscar statuette. The film would earn an additional $1.6 million when it was re-released in 1952. However, Willis O'Brien changed the film industry as a whole because after seeing this monumental film, the trajectory of one young man's life was changed forever. In the future, he would go on to create his own iconic movie monsters and inspire an entire generation of young moviegoers to pursue a career in the film industry. That young man was Ray Harryhausen. After seeing King Kong at Grauman's Chinese Theater at the age of 13, Ray's life was never the same. Upon learning how Kong and the dinosaurs were brought to life in the film, the young man would experiment with the art of stop-motion animation in his family's garage. This continued into his high school career, when one day he met Willis O'Brien through a classmate whose father worked at RKO. During this meeting, he would show Obie some of his makeshift dinosaur puppets. O'Brien would advise the young Harryhausen to take art classes in order to improve the musculature of his models. After this meeting, Ray would enroll in art school, where he would further refine his drawing and sculpting abilities. One of his earliest projects was a film called Evolution, a story about the development of life on Earth. However, after seeing the Rite of Spring segment from the 1940 Disney film Fantasia, he abandoned the project due to the similarities between the two segments. Not long after this, he would begin his official career as a stop-motion animator, animating for George Pal's Puppet Tunes. While serving in a Signal Corps unit during World War II, he would further refine his techniques by animating short sequences in training films. After the war, he would animate 4 short films based on fairy tales he called the Mother Goose stories, using film discarded by the U.S. Navy. While working on a final short based on the tortoise and the hare, he would receive a call from his mentor to work with him on a feature film. That film was Mighty Joe Young, another big ape film released in 1949. Though he had been hired as an assistant to O'Brien, Ray did most of the animation for the film himself. While not as successful as King Kong, this film was what got Ray's foot in the door of the feature film industry. For the first film where he did all the animation by himself, he worked on the film The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, a film depicting a giant monster rampaging through New York City. Not only was the film as a whole a massive success at the box office, it also went on to directly inspire perhaps the greatest movie monster of all time. After animating for The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, Ray would animate for 3 more monster films throughout the mid-50s. By the time he finished the animation for 20 Million Miles to Earth, a King Kong-esque monster movie depicting an alien from Venus rampaging through Rome, Ray had gotten tired of animating monsters rampaging through cities over and over again. Fortunately for him, the next film he would work on would break from this tedious pattern, as it would not be a monster film, but an epic fantasy adventure film. That film was The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. This was the first film Ray animated in color, and the first film to advertise his animation style, which he referred to as Dynamation. This was also the most important film Ray Harryhausen worked on, because much like how he was changed by seeing King Kong at a young age, many young men would see this film and be inspired to go into the film industry. Amongst these young men were future special effects artists like Phil Tippett and Stan Winston, as well as film directors like Peter Jackson, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg. After finishing his work on The Seventh Voyage, Ray would do the animation of the film 3 Worlds of Gold, which would be released in the winter of 1960. As Ray's star was rising in the public consciousness, his mentor's star faded into obscurity. Throughout the 50s, Willis O'Brien routinely struggled to find work in the film industry. A myriad of factors contributed to this predicament, whether it be being forced to work on low-budget productions or being hired on as an advisor rather than the creative lead in certain films. Obie would pass away in November 1962 after completing a brief animated sequence in the film It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Near the end of the decade, his protege would eventually do the animation for the Valley of Guanji, a film depicting cowboys battling dinosaurs in Mexico. This film originally started out as a concept formulated by Obie in previous decades. Unfortunately, Ray never credited Obie for formulating the concept, a regret he felt up until his death in 2013. But the year 1960 would not mark the end of Ray Harryhausen's career. In fact, his career would kick into overdrive, and the next decade would be the most successful period in his entire career. Amongst the films that he would work on in this decade, one would be considered his magnum opus by future generations. But that is a story for another day.